Hey there. So I'm wondering, are you tired of hearing sales, marketing, business gurus telling you that if you just follow their six step system, you'll make six figures in your business, or take your business from 6 to 7 figures, or get 10,000 new followers in a month? I'm getting a little bit tired of hearing those systems. And why is that? Because I think we all have tried systems like that in the past, and they sound so good on paper or in the Facebook ad. And then we get into the system, the step by step system created by somebody else, and we bog down in the middle. We don't know how exactly to apply their step to our business. We're not exactly sure how specifically to answer the question in a focused and tailored, specific way. And so we answer it in a general way, and it gets confusing, it's not quite right, and we get stuck around trying to get clarity before we're ready for clarity. And we're trying to get clarity by sitting around and thinking about it instead of getting out there and serving people and finding out how we can really meet needs. So this has happened to me, and I'm sure that it's happened to you, where you get in this rhythm of the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right? Seeing someone else's system and saying, wow, I'll bet that could work for me. So today we're going to talk about why those end step processes aren't the best thing for you. And I'm going to, spoiler alert, give it to you up front. Business development is not a linear process. It's not a serial process. It's not it's not able to be broken down into a step-by-step system. Step-by-step systems can give you kind of good ideas on how to move forward, but most business development is more complex than that, and business growth is more organic than that. And if you look at nature, there's not a lot in nature that's like these prescriptive, mechanical, step-by-step systems. Nature is messy. Nature is all over the place. So what should you do instead? So today I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my engineering background, and we're going to learn a lesson from engineering. So stick with me, because we're going to get a little bit nerdy and a little bit technical, but you're going to see the parallels here between engineering and your business. I'm Amy Simpkins. I'm the vision architect. And now I am an entrepreneurship coach and a speaker. And I help developing entrepreneurs to craft a cohesive, big picture, clear, focused vision of their business and their revenue streams so that they can then move forward and implement that vision iteratively, and so that they can do so while they're driving revenue, feeling fulfilled, having a huge impact on the world, and having room and flexibility to play and explore and go with the flow and walk through all of those doors of opportunity that don't open to you until you start moving forward. So that's what I do now. But if you know anything about me, you know that I am an engineer by education. In fact, a rocket scientist, as my mom would tell you. I have 2 degrees in aerospace engineering, and I worked in the corporate world designing, building, and flying spacecraft for 10 years. And so let's learn a lesson from engineering here. Engineering, shockingly, used to use a design process that was pretty similar to those end step processes. It was called the Waterfall method. And basically, you took each element of the design process, so you would come up with the ideation, and then you would design the technical system and all of the technical components. Then you would build it, then you would test it, and then you'd be ready to deploy it and operate it. And those are the steps. And so it just step down, one after the other, after the other. And so what would happen is that someone in my world, we're talking about spacecraft. Now, I'll take an aside here to tell you, if you're from a software background, you're going to recognize these paradigms we're talking about, waterfall versus spiral. But my background is not in software specifically, it's in spacecraft. And so I'm going to talk in slightly different terms. They're related, there's a lot of similarities, but some differences. So stick with me. Okay, so waterfall development is following that end-step process of ideation and design and build and test and deployment. So how many was that? Ideation, design, build, test. That's 5 steps. 5-step process. And so what would happen was a customer would come and say, I need to have a spacecraft built and it needs to do this thing or this set of things. And they would deliver a document of technical requirements. And the contractor would then take the technical requirements and go off into their building and design the spacecraft and build it and test it and then deliver it and say, here you go, here's the spacecraft that you were looking for. And sometimes the customer would say, that's not actually the spacecraft that we needed. Either the requirements that we originally wrote didn't accurately communicate what we actually needed. We weren't exactly sure or solidified around what we needed, and so we just put these down as, not guidelines, but, placeholders. You have interpreted the requirements differently from the way that we had intended. And so at that point in the process, by the time you get to this deployment phase, it's really expensive to make changes. If you can make a change back in the ideation phase or even in the design phase, changes are pretty cheap. It's paper and pencil, it's coming out of your brain, not a big deal. But when you have a spacecraft that's almost ready to launch, even making small tweaks to it, it's really expensive. So that design paradigm, that design approach turned out to be just not great, and especially not great for huge, complex, expensive systems like spacecraft. A stepwise system like that might be okay for small things that don't cost very much, so that it's easy to go back and redesign. But for a spacecraft, that's just huge, and it's very high risk. And if there's one thing you want to do as a spacecraft engineer, it is to reduce risk, especially the risk of blowing your multi-million-dollar, sometimes billion-dollar investment. So hopefully you're seeing already the parallels between that kind of process and what some people do in their business. And even if you've heard the phrase in your business, don't create in a vacuum, it's hard. You get inspired. You get these amazing ideas. Someone tells you that they have a problem and they need a solution, and you get that spark that says, I can help you solve that. And so you run off into your corner and you design a thing that solves that. And when you bring it and you deploy it, you put it out there, you put up your sales page, you run a Facebook ad, and nobody buys it. And you think, what happened? Someone told me they had a specific need, and I met that specific need. So I'd like to suggest to you that some of the same things apply, that perhaps the need that you heard wasn't well refined, and they didn't know how to articulate their need. And so you need to listen a little bit deeper. It's possible that what they actually need, they didn't even know what they actually needed. It's possible that they told you what they need, but you interpreted it a little bit differently. Or that just with your current knowledge set, what you were able to produce at this point was not the perfect thing. And that's okay, because we're all learning and we're all growing and we're all evolving all at once. So how can we prevent this in the future? So to take it back to the engineering metaphor, to go back, a new design paradigm was developed. And this was a spiral development approach. It's iterative, not linear. Iterative, not serial. So instead of just taking one step by step by step by step process and then being done no matter what. An iterative process means that you would take the requirements and sometimes start at like a broad level, so the big requirements, and then do a little bit of design work and say, here's how we might implement that. And then you might do some testing on it. Now, if it's really big requirements and you can't really build complex hardware with it because you don't have that specific of a design yet, that's okay. Sometimes the testing was just analysis. It might have been computer simulation. It might have been just a few, back of the envelope calculations to like sanity check, and then coming back around and working with the customer at that point to say, is this what you meant? Okay, if this is what you meant, you're going to have to make a compromise on this other requirement, because in order to meet all of your requirements, we have to make compromises. Is that okay? Is this really what you want? And to all the while be talking with the actual users of the system to make sure that you're meeting the actual need that's there instead of just the interpretation of the need. Right? And so then once you talk to the customers, then you can go back around and your spiral, actually, you come in a little more. Instead of being in this broad, general sense, you come in and get a little more specific, and you do a little more detailed design. And you might be able to build a little bit of hardware and do tests that way. Test again, come back around. Is this going to meet the need? Is this what you meant? How can we refine it? How can we make it better? And how can we make the changes when we're at a low risk, inexpensive point in the cycle? Okay, and that helps not only to buy down the risk, but also to increase the customer engagement. Your customers and your users and all of your stakeholders feeling like they're heard. Now, if you're not in engineering, you might be thinking of engineering as a cold, technical, cold, hard math kind of discipline. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings who are here making our art, being creative, generating new things where things didn't exist before. And so the power of having people have their needs heard, their needs met, their ideas heard, and having that kind of engagement is so powerful, even when the objective in the end is a mechanical robotic system. So how do you apply this kind of iteration in your business? Well, instead of taking the initial idea and hearing just a little part of the need and running off into your corner and creating in a vacuum and then deploying and expecting it to be done, try thinking of your business in an iterative sort of way, so that think of those main pieces of the iterative process, just the same as engineering. So you have this like ideation phase where you hear the problem, you hear the need from your clients, and you think, I have a solution to this. Okay, here's about how I could lay that out. Then you do a little bit of build. Maybe it's not your full up, high ticket, high end program right away. Maybe it's something small in scope. Maybe it's just the bare bones of it, or maybe it's just the first segment of it. Maybe you only engage with one or two people instead of putting it out for sale as passive income and expecting a list of 10,000 people to buy it. Start with it in a small and focused sort of way, build just a piece of it, and then test. Now, just like engineering, you might not be able to run a full up test right away. That's like running it as a program or a full product with a lot of people. Maybe at the beginning, your first test is just a survey, or it's just picking a couple of people's brains who you trust, former clients who you know have this sort of need. And then come back around in the iteration again and do a little more ideation, develop the idea a little more, build it out a little further, and maybe the next time around in testing, you're able to actually offer it as a small program and engage a few more people. Widen your scope, because you're at the same time that you're spiraling into specificity on your ideation and your vision and the way that you've developed it, you're also spiraling out in influence, influencing more and more people at the same time. So this is a new way for you to think about your business instead of step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and I'm done, and why aren't people buying? But to think of it in terms of iteration. Coming back around all the time to develop and refine further. Don't create in a vacuum. Don't set out to have perfection first. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This sets you free. This method sets you free to be able to put something down and move on. Because let me tell you, you're only going to be able to refine your concept so much sitting alone by yourself at your desk creating a product. To experience real clarity and to get really refined and focused, you need to get out there and testing with your clients. So, I know we got nerdy. I know we got technical. We went deep down into engineering on this video, but I hope that you see the parallel between engineering and business development. And I hope that you're able to shift your mindset a little bit and see it not just as this serial step-by-step prescriptive process, but as an organic, iterative spiral growth. Think of a fern leaf unfurling. Ferns grow as spirals when they're babies, and then when they're ready, they unfurl. And that's kind of what your business is doing. It's okay to start in that tight little spiral that doesn't even look like a leaf, and then let it naturally and organically unfold as you get more experience, more interaction, and your customers and clients experience the power of being heard and having their actual needs met. It's a beautiful thing. Leave me comments below this video and let me know how iteration has helped you in your business, and I will catch you on the next broadcast. If I can hit the button. Blah, blah, blah. This is ruining my dramatic exit.